There comes a moment when you have to stop asking, how do I make them care? And start asking, why am I still giving my attention to someone who has already shown me they don't value it? Because the hardest truth about being ignored is not that someone is ignoring you. It is that you keep chasing them after they have shown you what their attention is worth. One of the most exhausting things you can do is try to earn the attention of someone who has already shown you that they are not interested in giving it freely. You send the first message, then another. You check whether they are online. You wonder why they haven't responded. You replay your last conversation and search for something you might have said incorrectly. Then you start adjusting yourself. You become more agreeable, more available, more entertaining, more understanding. You think that if you can just become valuable enough, interesting enough, useful enough, they will finally give you the attention you want. But this is where you make the mistake. You are no longer connecting with someone. You are auditioning for them, and the moment you begin auditioning for someone's attention, you give that person psychological control over you. Their response determines your mood. Their silence creates anxiety. Their approval gives you relief. Their rejection makes you question yourself. You begin measuring your worth through another person's behavior, and that is a dangerous position to live in, because now they don't even have to say anything. Their silence is enough to control your thoughts. You have to understand that genuine interest does not require constant persuasion. When someone genuinely wants to communicate with you, you don't have to build an elaborate strategy to make them answer. You don't have to send 5 messages because the first one was ignored. You don't have to manufacture reasons to appear in their life. You don't have to constantly prove that you're interesting. Their interest creates movement naturally. This doesn't mean you should never make an effort. Effort is healthy. Communication is healthy. Reaching out is healthy. The problem begins when effort becomes one-sided and you refuse to acknowledge it. There is a difference between showing interest and chasing validation. Showing interest says, I would like to connect with you. Chasing validation says, I need you to respond so I can feel valuable. One comes from confidence. The other comes from emotional dependence. The more you chase someone who ignores you, the more you teach yourself that their attention is something you need to obtain. And once your mind accepts that idea, you begin tolerating behavior you would normally reject. You excuse inconsistency. You overlook disrespect. You accept delayed responses, canceled plans, vague answers, and emotional distance because you're afraid that demanding better treatment might cause the person to disappear completely. But if someone's presence depends on you accepting poor treatment, what exactly are you protecting? Your goal should never be to convince someone that you're worth their time. Your goal should be to notice who naturally values your time. Pay attention to reciprocity. Who initiates conversations? Who checks on you? Who remembers what you said? Who makes room for you? Who follows through? These behaviors tell you far more than words ever will. And when the effort becomes consistently one-sided, don't panic. Don't suddenly increase your effort because you're afraid of losing the connection. Step back and observe. Give the other person room to demonstrate what they actually want. If they care, they have the opportunity to move toward you. If they don't, their continued absence gives you an answer without requiring another confrontation. This is where self-respect becomes practical. Self-respect isn't simply telling yourself that you're valuable. It is behaving like your time and attention have value. It means you don't repeatedly place yourself in situations where you have to beg for basic consideration. It means you can care about someone without constantly pursuing them. It means you can accept that not everyone will choose you without turning their decision into a judgment of your worth. You don't need to become cold. You don't need to play psychological games. You don't need to ignore someone just to make them chase you. You simply need to stop doing the work of two people. Give your attention where it is returned. Give your energy where it creates something. And when someone repeatedly shows you that they don't want your attention, believe their behavior instead of inventing a better explanation for it. There is a psychological mistake people make when someone starts pulling away. Instead of stepping back, they move closer. The other person becomes less responsive, so they send more messages. The other person becomes less available, so they become even more available. The other person gives less effort, so they start giving double. They believe that if they increase their effort enough, they can restore the connection to what it used to be. But what they often create instead is an imbalance where one person is constantly pursuing while the other person is constantly deciding whether to respond. You have to learn to recognize the difference between effort and overcompensation. Effort is when you communicate your interest clearly and give someone an opportunity to meet you halfway. Overcompensation is when you continue increasing your investment after the other person has already reduced theirs. That is when your attention becomes something you are trying to use to force a reaction. Matching energy is not about becoming petty. It is not about counting how many minutes someone took to respond and deliberately waiting the exact same amount of time. It is not about playing childish games where you pretend not to care. Real emotional control is much simpler. You observe behavior and you stop investing more than the relationship is currently giving back. If someone reaches out, you respond when it makes sense. If someone makes plans, you participate. If someone consistently communicates, you communicate. But if someone repeatedly disappears, cancels, gives one-word responses, or makes no effort to maintain the connection, you don't respond by working harder to keep it alive. You allow the relationship to reveal its natural level. This requires emotional discipline because uncertainty creates discomfort. When someone pulls away, your mind wants an explanation. It starts searching for answers. Maybe they're busy. Maybe they're upset. Maybe they met someone else. Maybe you said something wrong. Maybe if you send one more message, everything will return to normal. And because you don't know the answer, you feel compelled to act. But sometimes the most intelligent response to uncertainty is observation. You don't need to immediately solve every change in someone's behavior. Give them space to show you what is happening. If their distance is temporary, they will eventually reconnect. If they are genuinely busy, their behavior will become clearer. If their interest has changed, their continued lack of effort will make that obvious. You don't need to chase clarity when behavior is already providing information. Think about what happens psychologically when you constantly pursue someone who is withdrawing. They begin to expect your pursuit. They know that even if they disappear, you will eventually return. They know they can give minimal effort and still receive maximum attention. Without realizing it, you have created a system where your desperation becomes predictable. But when you step back, the dynamic changes. You are no longer trying to control their behavior. You are simply refusing to compensate for it. This also protects you from becoming emotionally dependent. When you constantly monitor another person's effort, your mood becomes attached to their behavior. A message makes you happy. Silence makes you anxious. A delayed response makes you question yourself. A warm conversation makes you feel secure again. You are essentially allowing someone else to control your emotional state without even being present. Matching energy breaks that cycle. You stop asking, how do I get them to give me more? And start asking, what are they actually giving me? That question is far more powerful because it forces you to evaluate reality instead of potential. Someone may have been different in the past. They may have once talked to you for hours. They may have once made you feel important. But relationships exist in the present. You cannot build a healthy connection entirely from memories of how someone used to treat you. If their energy changes, let your behavior change naturally. Not dramatically, not emotionally, just proportionally. You don't have to announce your withdrawal. You don't have to confront them. You don't have to prove that you're suddenly independent. Simply stop carrying the relationship by yourself. When you stop chasing, you create space for the truth to appear. Someone who genuinely values the connection will have room to step forward. Someone who doesn't will continue moving away. Either outcome gives you clarity, and clarity is far more valuable than spending your time trying to convince someone to give you what they are already choosing not to give. One of the hardest lessons to accept is that silence can communicate more than words ever will. When someone stops responding, most people immediately search for an explanation. They start asking themselves what happened, what they did wrong, whether they should send another message, or whether there is some hidden reason behind the sudden distance. The mind hates uncertainty, so it tries to fill the silence with theories. But sometimes you don't need another explanation. Sometimes the absence of communication is itself information. This doesn't mean every unanswered message is a rejection. People get busy. People become distracted. People have personal problems. A single delayed response tells you very little. The mistake happens when silence becomes a pattern and you continue treating every occurrence as an isolated incident. One unanswered message may mean nothing. Repeated silence, especially when combined with low effort and inconsistent behavior, tells you something about the relationship. The important thing is to stop demanding certainty from someone who is refusing to provide it. You might send a second message because you think they didn't see the first. Then you send another because you worry something happened. Then another because you want to make sure they know you care. Eventually, you're no longer communicating. You're pursuing a response. And every additional attempt can increase your emotional investment while giving the other person less reason to invest themselves. You become focused on getting an answer instead of asking whether the relationship is actually worth the effort. This is where emotional discipline matters. You have to be able to sit with unanswered questions without immediately reacting to them. Not every silence needs to be broken. Not every distance needs to be repaired. Not every change in someone's behavior requires a confrontation. Sometimes you learn more by doing nothing. Step back and watch. Does the person eventually reach out? Do they explain themselves? Do they make an effort to reconnect? Do they behave as though the relationship matters to them, or does nothing happen? That observation gives you information that another desperate message never could. People often say that communication is everything, but communication only works when both people participate. You cannot create a meaningful conversation by yourself. You cannot build trust alone. You cannot maintain a relationship alone. At some point, the other person has to choose to participate. If they repeatedly choose not to, believe the pattern. This doesn't require anger. It doesn't require resentment. You don't need to label them as a bad person. Someone can be a decent person and still not be the right person for you. Someone can care about you in some limited way and still not want the same level of connection you want. Someone can appreciate you and still choose distance. Your responsibility is not to force their behavior to match your expectations. Your responsibility is to recognize what their behavior is telling you and decide what you will do with that information. Silence becomes especially powerful when you stop treating it as a challenge. If you believe someone's silence is a puzzle you must solve, you'll keep chasing clues. You'll analyze their social media activity, remember old conversations, study their tone, and search for hidden meanings. Your attention becomes trapped inside another person's behavior. But when you accept silence as information, you become calmer. You stop needing to know every reason. You don't need a perfect explanation before you're allowed to move forward. Maybe they lost interest. Maybe their priorities changed. Maybe they don't know how to communicate. Maybe they are avoiding an uncomfortable conversation. Maybe they're simply not thinking about the relationship as much as you are. You may never know. And that's okay. Closure doesn't always come from another person's explanation. Sometimes closure comes from recognizing that you have received enough information to stop pursuing the situation. The powerful response to silence is not louder communication. It is awareness. Notice the pattern. Notice the imbalance. Notice how often you are initiating. Notice how often you're waiting. Notice how much mental energy you're spending trying to get a response from someone who isn't providing one. Then make a decision based on reality rather than hope. If they come back, you can evaluate their behavior. If they don't, you can continue without them. But you no longer need to stand still waiting for an answer that may never arrive. The moment you realize that someone is ignoring you, your attention can become trapped by their behavior. You may tell yourself that you are simply waiting for a response, but psychologically, something much deeper is happening. Your mind starts checking for signs. You look at your phone. You wonder whether they are online. You reread old conversations. You notice when they post something but don't respond to you. You begin creating explanations for every small detail. And before you realize it, someone who isn't even speaking to you has occupied a large portion of your mental space. This is the hidden cost of chasing attention. You don't just give someone your time. You give them control over where your mind goes. Attention is one of the most valuable resources you possess because wherever your attention goes, your emotional energy tends to follow. If you constantly focus on someone who is ignoring you, you reinforce the very attachment that is making you frustrated. You keep thinking about them, which makes you want to contact them, which makes you wait for their response, which makes you check again. The cycle continues because your mind keeps receiving the message that this person is important enough to monitor. The way out is not to force yourself to stop caring instantly. That usually doesn't work. The way out is to redirect your attention deliberately. When you catch yourself checking your phone for their message, don't criticize yourself. Notice what you're doing. Then move your attention towards something that actually produces value in your life. Work on a goal. Exercise. Read. Learn something. Talk to someone who appreciates your presence. Build something. Clean your environment. Go somewhere without your phone for a while. The specific activity matters less than the principle. Your attention needs somewhere better to go. This is important because emotional detachment is not created by repeatedly telling yourself that you don't care. It is created by giving your mind new places to invest itself. Imagine spending hours thinking about why someone hasn't responded. At the end of those hours, what have you gained? You haven't changed their feelings. You haven't created a stronger connection. You haven't improved your situation. You have simply spent your most limited resource, your attention, on something outside your control. Now imagine taking those same hours and investing them in yourself. Your body becomes stronger. Your skills improve. Your work gets better. Your confidence grows. Your relationships become healthier. Your goals become clearer. The person who ignored you may not even notice the difference immediately, but you will. This is why taking back your attention is more powerful than trying to get someone's attention back. One keeps you dependent on their behavior. The other returns control to you. You also have to be careful about using social media as a substitute for direct connection. Checking someone's profile repeatedly can create the illusion that you are staying connected when you are actually reinforcing the attachment. You see their pictures, their activity, their comments, and their updates, and your brain continues receiving small pieces of information about them. That keeps the psychological loop alive. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is create distance from the information itself. Mute the account if necessary. Put your phone away. Stop checking their status. Stop looking for hidden messages in their posts. Stop asking mutual friends what they're doing. You don't need a constant stream of updates about someone you are trying to detach from. Your goal is not to make them wonder where you went. Your goal is to stop wondering where they are. That distinction matters. If you withdraw your attention because you want them to chase you, you are still emotionally dependent on their reaction. You haven't actually taken your power back. You have simply changed your strategy for getting their attention. Real detachment happens when their response becomes secondary to your direction. If they message you, you can decide whether you want to respond. If they don't, you continue living. If they suddenly become interested again, you don't abandon your priorities to accommodate them. Your life continues moving whether they participate or not. This doesn't mean becoming heartless. It means becoming selective with your mental energy. Not everyone deserves unlimited access to your thoughts. Not everyone deserves to occupy your emotional world. Simply because you once cared about them, you can care and still redirect your attention. You can miss someone and still move forward. You can wonder about someone without checking on them. You can remember someone without returning to the same cycle. Every time you redirect your attention back toward yourself, you weaken the habit of chasing and strengthen the habit of self-command. Eventually, you realize that the real victory was never getting them to respond. It was reaching the point where you no longer need their response to decide what you do next. When someone repeatedly ignores you, disrespects your time, or treats your attention as though it has no value, the natural reaction is often to give them more of yourself. You try harder to prove that you care. You become more available. You forgive faster. You answer immediately when they finally return. You tell yourself that maybe this time things will be different. But there is a psychological problem with this pattern. When poor treatment is consistently followed by greater access to you, you accidentally teach the other person that they can treat you badly without losing anything. People learn through consequences, and relationships are built from patterns. If someone disappears for days and you welcome them back as though nothing happened every single time, there is no reason for the pattern to change. If someone repeatedly cancels plans and you continue rearranging your schedule for them, they learn that your time is flexible. If someone only contacts you when they need something and you always respond with enthusiasm, they learn that your attention remains available whenever they want it. This doesn't mean you need to punish people. It means you need to stop making disrespect comfortable. There is a difference between punishment and boundaries. Punishment is designed to make someone suffer. A boundary is designed to protect your own time, energy, and emotional stability. You don't need to make someone jealous. You don't need to ignore them for exactly as long as they ignored you. You don't need to post something online hoping they will see it. Those behaviors still make their reaction the center of your attention. Instead, simply change the amount of access they have to you. If someone repeatedly shows that they don't value your time, stop giving them unlimited access to it. If they consistently communicate only when it benefits them, stop making yourself constantly available. If they repeatedly disappear and return whenever they want attention, you don't have to immediately return to the same level of closeness. Your behavior should communicate that access to you is connected to how you are treated. This is not about becoming difficult. It is about becoming intentional. Some people will test your boundaries because they are accustomed to the version of you who always says yes. They may be surprised when you stop responding immediately. They may ask why you are different. They may suddenly become more interested when they realize that your attention is no longer guaranteed. Be careful here. Their sudden interest does not automatically mean they have changed. Sometimes people don't miss you. They miss the access they had to you. The difference is visible through behavior over time. Anyone can become attentive for a few days after realizing they might lose something. Consistency is what reveals whether the change is real. You don't need to announce this principle. You don't need to explain every boundary. Your actions can communicate it quietly. If someone cancels repeatedly, stop making them a priority. If someone constantly gives you the bare minimum, stop giving them the maximum. If someone only appears when they need something, stop treating the relationship as equally important to you. This is where self-respect becomes visible. You are teaching people how to interact with you, not through speeches, but through what you consistently tolerate. If you tolerate endless disrespect, people may assume there is no cost to giving it. If you calmly remove access when a pattern becomes unhealthy, you establish a different standard. And the most important part is that you don't need anger to do it. You can be completely calm, you can wish someone well and still keep your distance. You can forgive someone and still decide that they no longer belong in the same position in your life. You can care about someone and still refuse to keep participating in a one-sided relationship. Forgiveness does not require unlimited access. Kindness does not require unlimited availability. Love does not require abandoning your standards. The goal is not to become someone who never gives second chances. The goal is to become someone who knows the difference between a mistake and a pattern. Everyone makes mistakes. People get busy. People misunderstand each other. People occasionally fail to communicate. But when the same behavior repeats again and again, you are no longer dealing with an accident. You are dealing with a pattern. And patterns deserve to be evaluated. Instead of asking, how can I make this person treat me better? Ask yourself, what will I do if they continue treating me this way? That question moves the focus away from controlling them and toward controlling your own decisions. Because you cannot force respect. You cannot force consistency. You cannot force appreciation. But you can decide who receives your time, your energy, your trust, and your attention. There comes a point when you have to stop asking why someone didn't choose you and start asking whether you are still choosing yourself. When someone ignores you, rejects you, pulls away, or suddenly stops giving you the attention they once gave, the first instinct is often to take it personally. You start comparing yourself to other people. You wonder what they have that you don't. You question whether you were not attractive enough, interesting enough, successful enough, or valuable enough. And if you stay inside those questions for too long, you slowly turn someone else's decision into a judgment about your identity. But another person's decision is not a complete measurement of your worth. People choose based on their own desires, fears, priorities, experiences, limitations, and circumstances. Sometimes they walk away from something valuable because they cannot recognize its value. Sometimes two people simply want different things. Sometimes someone loses interest without having a dramatic reason. And sometimes the connection was never as meaningful to them as it was to you. That can hurt, but it does not make you less valuable. The danger begins when rejection creates a desire for revenge. You want them to regret losing you. You want them to see you becoming successful. You want them to notice that you are suddenly happier without them. You post things hoping they will look. You become more visible because you want them to wonder what they lost. But if your entire transformation is designed for someone else's attention, you haven't truly moved forward. You're still organizing your life around them. Real power is quieter. You don't need them to regret losing you. You don't need them to come back. You don't need them to apologize. You don't need them to admit that they were wrong. You don't even need them to understand what they lost. You need to understand what you gained by finally choosing yourself. When you stop chasing someone, you create space. That space can initially feel uncomfortable because you're used to filling it with their presence, their messages, their attention, and your thoughts about them. But eventually, that same space becomes freedom. You begin rediscovering parts of yourself that were neglected while you were focused on getting someone else to stay. You start asking different questions. What do I actually want? What kind of people do I want around me? What standards have I compromised? What goals did I postpone while obsessing over this relationship? What would my life look like if I stopped waiting for someone else's approval? Those questions rebuild you from the inside. Choosing yourself doesn't mean becoming selfish or emotionally unavailable. It means refusing to abandon your own standards just because someone else doesn't meet them. It means recognizing that love without reciprocity can become exhaustion. It means understanding that loyalty without boundaries can become self-neglect. You can still care about someone and walk away. You can still miss someone and refuse to chase them. You can still appreciate the memories without trying to recreate the relationship. You can forgive someone without inviting them back into the same position. This is emotional maturity. And when you choose yourself, you don't need to make a dramatic announcement. You don't need to tell everyone that you're done. You don't need to create a final speech designed to make the other person feel guilty. Just change your behavior. Stop initiating when the connection is consistently one-sided. Stop explaining yourself to someone committed to misunderstanding you. Stop begging for attention. Stop checking whether they are watching. Stop trying to make them jealous. Stop measuring your progress by their reaction. Your life is not a performance for someone who decided not to participate. Build because you want to build. Improve because you want to improve. Become stronger because you want to become stronger. Co-create a better life because you deserve a better life, not because you want someone from your past to notice it. Eventually, you reach a point where their opinion becomes irrelevant, not because you hate them, but because your attention has returned to where it belongs, you. And this is the moment the entire dynamic changes. You stop trying to be chosen and start becoming selective about who gets access to you. You stop asking whether someone wants you and start asking whether you actually want the version of them they are showing you. You stop being impressed by temporary attention and start looking for consistent behavior. That is the difference between needing someone and choosing someone. Need says, please don't leave. Choice says, I want you here, but I will be okay without you. That mindset changes everything. So if someone ignores you, let them. If someone walks away, let them walk. If someone doesn't recognize your value, you don't need to stand there explaining it. You don't need revenge. You need direction. You don't need their regret. You need your peace. You don't need them to come back. You need to stop abandoning yourself while waiting for them to.